The courtroom was a blend of formality and tension, the air thick with an anticipation that came from knowing a decision would soon be rendered on a case that had garnered unexpected attention. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating the polished wooden benches where spectators sat in silence, their eyes focused on the front where the judge presided. The atmosphere felt almost alive, with whispers of gossip circulating about the peculiar circumstances leading to this day. At the center of it all sat the imposing figure of Judge Harrison, a man whose stern face and lined forehead spoke of decades spent wielding authority within these hallowed walls. He adjusted his glasses and looked down from his perch, scanning the room as if measuring not just the physical presence of those before him, but their very character. Today was different. He could feel it resonating in the depths of his usually stoic demeanor. This case involved a young Asian boy, not yet a teenager, who had found himself in the striking position of being scrutinized by the judicial system, not for any violent crime or serious infraction, but over an incident that seemed trivial to most adults. In fact, it was so minor that many in attendance had trouble understanding how it had escalated to this level. Yet here they were, witnessing what promised to be an unusual court session. The boy sat nervously between his appointed attorney and a guardian, fidgeting slightly in the oversized suit that seemed to swallow him whole. Though just 13 years old, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with his petite stature. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he looked around, taking in everything: the flickering lights overhead, the stack of legal documents piled precariously on the judge's bench, and the expectant faces turned toward him. The audience included a mix of community members, some curious citizens drawn by local interest stories that hinted at something extraordinary about this case, while others merely wanted to witness how justice would unfold in such peculiar circumstances. Murmurs rippled through them like waves. There were children clutching their parents' hands tightly, and adults trading glances filled with intrigue. As Judge Harrison banged his gavel for order and called for silence, a palpable tension settled over the room. His voice carried authority as he introduced the case details. "We are here today regarding minor infractions committed by this young defendant." He gestured casually towards the boy's direction without truly looking at him. He was still unaware that this boy was anything but ordinary. In contrast to Judge Harrison's straightforward manner were those seated near him, court officials working diligently on paperwork, while occasionally exchanging nervous glances among themselves, perhaps anticipating any twists this case might offer. A few lawyers flipped through their notes, with an urgency punctuated by the rustle of pages, a sound that echoed softly against the courtroom walls. Little did they know that beneath this surface of routine proceedings lay an extraordinary intellect ready to challenge every preconceived notion they held about childhood innocence versus criminal culpability. The stage was set not only for judgment but for enlightenment in ways none could predict. At the center of this unfolding drama was 12-year-old Ethan Liu, a boy whose life had been marked by both challenges and remarkable accomplishments. Born into a modest household in a suburban neighborhood, Ethan was the only child of immigrant parents who had worked tirelessly to provide him with opportunities they never had. Their sacrifices instilled in him a sense of responsibility and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Ethan's academic journey had been anything but ordinary. He was not only a gifted student but also a legal prodigy, often found immersed in books well beyond his grade level. While his classmates were engrossed in video games or playground antics, Ethan could often be seen poring over volumes of law texts, fascinated by concepts that many adults struggled to comprehend. His curiosity was relentless. He would engage anyone, teachers, family members, even strangers, into discussions about justice, ethics, and the intricacies of the legal system. Despite his exceptional intelligence, Ethan faced social challenges. His peers found it difficult to relate to him, seeing him as an outsider due to his quiet demeanor and intense focus on academics. In school, he was often teased for being different, labeled as the smart kid or teacher's pet. Rather than allowing this to deter him, Ethan used the taunts as motivation, pushing himself harder in his studies and seeking solace in the written word. Books became his refuge and companions during lonely times. His parents recognized Ethan's potential early on and made every effort to nurture it. They enrolled him in advanced classes and encouraged him to participate in debate clubs and academic competitions. As a result, Ethan began winning accolades that further isolated him from his peers but also solidified his reputation as a young genius. The local community soon took notice. Articles were written about his impressive achievements, highlighting his ability to dissect complex legal issues that left many adults bewildered. However, beneath this veneer of intellectual prowess lay a boy grappling with the weight of expectations. Ethan often felt pressured to excel, not just for himself but to honor his parents' sacrifices. This pressure sometimes manifested as anxiety. Moments of self-doubt crept in when he thought about fitting in or being accepted by others his age. The spotlight that came with recognition sometimes felt more like a burden than a blessing. The incident that brought him to court was the culmination of a series of misunderstandings, an attempt at defending a classmate against bullying that went awry and led to accusations of misconduct. It was a minor infraction that belied the complexity of the situation and failed to capture the essence of who Ethan truly was, not just a boy caught up in trouble, but a young mind capable of understanding the nuances of legality and morality far beyond his years. As he sat in the courtroom, fidgeting in his oversized suit, Ethan's thoughts raced. He wasn't just defending himself. He was prepared to challenge the assumptions made about him and prove that there was more beneath his quiet exterior than met the eye. Little did those around him know that today would be more than just another court session. It would be a revelation. The incident that led to Ethan Liu's court appearance began on an otherwise ordinary school day, one that would soon spiral into chaos and misunderstanding. It started during lunch in the bustling cafeteria, where laughter and chatter filled the air, a stark contrast to Ethan's solitary demeanor as he sat at a corner table with a book in hand. This particular day, however, was different. Tensions were simmering among some of the students. In the midst of cliques and social groups, a scene unfolded as two boys began picking on Ethan's friend, Sarah, who had always been kind to him despite their differences. She was small for her age, and often became the target of taunts. Seeing Sarah in distress sparked something within Ethan, a deep-rooted sense of justice that propelled him into action. He couldn't just sit by while someone he cared about was being bullied. Ethan approached the boys, his heart racing but his conviction strong. He politely asked them to stop, invoking the school's anti-bullying policy that he had memorized during his own research on student rights. To Ethan's astonishment, instead of retreating, the boys laughed at him, mocking both his intervention and his stature. They hurled insults, not only aimed at Sarah but at Ethan as well, calling him names like teacher's pet and bookworm. In a moment fueled by frustration and a need to protect his friend, Ethan felt compelled to escalate the situation, not through aggression but through adherence to fairness. He stood firm against the bullies, citing chapter and verse from school regulations about harassment. Unbeknownst to him, this only provoked them further. What initially seemed like a direct defense quickly turned into chaos. The scuffle escalated when one of the boys pushed Ethan away in retaliation, causing him to stumble into a nearby table filled with drinks. The resulting commotion spilled milk and juice everywhere, creating pandemonium in the cafeteria. Amid shouts and confusion, teachers rushed over to separate the students involved. The situation took an unfortunate turn when staff members arrived on the scene. In their haste to restore order, they misjudged Ethan's role. Instead of recognizing him as the defender of a friend caught in a difficult ordeal, they perceived him as a participant in the conflict, a boy who provoked trouble rather than diffusing it. By the end of that day, not only had Ethan faced disciplinary referral from school administrators for instigating violence, but he also learned he would face potential legal repercussions for property damage caused during the altercation. As news of this incident spread throughout the community and school district, it transformed from a personal misunderstanding into headlines that captured local attention. Parents were outraged. Each side took their stand on whether harsher consequences were warranted for bullying behavior or for Ethan's actions, which ultimately led to this court date that now loomed before him. Seemingly minor in nature, what began as an attempt to defend a classmate had escalated into something far more serious, setting a dramatic stage where perceptions would undoubtedly clash with reality when it was Ethan's turn to speak in court. As Judge Harrison settled into his role, he surveyed the courtroom with a critical eye. He was a seasoned jurist, accustomed to the nuances of various cases, yet this one stirred a mix of curiosity and skepticism within him. The boy before him, Ethan Liu, appeared small and timid, fidgeting in his oversized suit while stealing glances at the audience. The judge's brow furrowed as he took in the boy's slight frame and youthful features. He couldn't help but draw immediate conclusions based on these impressions. The judge had seen countless cases involving minors, often dealing with issues that stemmed from misunderstandings or unwise choices made by children seeking their place in a complicated social landscape. In his mind, Ethan fit a familiar mold, an intelligent child who might be socially awkward or overly zealous about rules, traits that typically aligned with academic excellence but often rendered such youths vulnerable to the harsher judgments of their peers and adults alike. What struck Judge Harrison even more were the whispers circulating around the courtroom, comments from spectators that hinted at assumptions based on Ethan's Asian heritage. The judge had always prided himself on being fair and impartial, but as he listened to murmurs about overachieving Asian kids and how they can't handle confrontation, he felt a familiar tug of societal stereotypes vying for attention in his mind. He could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on this young boy, shaped not only by his actions at school but also by the demographic lens through which he was viewed. As he prepared to hear the details of the case, Judge Harrison reminded himself of his duty to separate fact from perception. Yet, he couldn't shake the biases that lingered in the air like an uninvited guest. He wondered if Ethan's intellect would lead him to manipulate the situation to his advantage, or if he was merely a victim of circumstance trying to navigate a world that didn't always understand him. With each moment that passed, the judge contemplated how best to communicate with a bright young mind. He understood that children often processed information differently than adults, and that their motivations could be complex. But before him sat a boy who was now under scrutiny for actions that, on the surface, appeared reckless and misguided. Ethan's gaze remained cast downward as if trying to avoid the weight of judgment altogether. Judge Harrison felt a pang of sympathy amidst his skepticism. He recalled moments from his own youth when ambition clashed with peer acceptance. Perhaps there was more to this story than met the eye, an underlying intelligence waiting to manifest itself if only given the opportunity. As Judge Harrison called for order and prepared to hear testimony, he made a silent vow to himself: he would keep an open mind. In this crucial moment, he realized that while appearances could be deceiving, true understanding required peeling back layers of complexity waiting to be explored, a journey he was now about to embark upon in this unusual courtroom drama. As the gavel struck, signaling the official commencement of the hearing, a hush fell over the courtroom, amplifying the tension that already permeated the air. Judge Harrison looked over at Ethan, who sat stiffly beside his attorney, a worried expression etched across his youthful face. The audience held its breath in anticipation as the judge signaled for the prosecution to begin. The prosecutor rose, a sharp-suited individual with an authoritative presence that commanded attention. She laid out the details of the case clearly and concisely, recounting how Ethan had allegedly instigated an altercation between two boys that resulted in property damage during a lunch period. Her tone was stern as she emphasized the need for accountability in schools to uphold order and safety among students. "This behavior cannot simply be overlooked," she asserted, her voice reverberating off the high ceilings, "as it sets a dangerous precedent for future conduct." Ethan's attorney stood next. He was a calm, determined figure who seemed committed to conveying Ethan's perspective. "Your Honor," he began, addressing Judge Harrison directly, "the circumstances surrounding this incident were wildly misunderstood." He painted a picture of Ethan not as a troublemaker but as an advocate standing up for his friend against bullying, a noble act twisted into something malicious by sheer happenstance. After presenting arguments from both sides, the judge invited witnesses to share their perspectives on what transpired that fateful day in the cafeteria. One by one, students were called forward to testify. The first witness was Sarah, Ethan's close friend who had faced bullying. Her voice trembled slightly as she recounted the event from her viewpoint. "Ethan stood up for me when no one else would," she explained, eyes glistening with emotion. "He just wanted me to be safe." The prosecutor attempted to undermine her testimony by suggesting that Ethan's intervention was inappropriate and led to chaos. But with each question posed, Sarah's conviction shone through. Her account lent credibility to Ethan's intentions. Next came one of the boys involved in the initial bullying incident. He claimed that Ethan's confrontation made things worse, noting how he felt provoked and cornered during their interactions. The courtroom erupted in murmurs at his accusations. It was clear polarizing opinions emerged among the spectators about who was truly at fault. The proceedings continued with agonizing precision. Emotions fluctuated in waves impacting all present. The witness stand occasionally elicited gasps from the audience, or angry rebuttals from those sympathetic to either side. As testimonies unfolded, Ethan remained quiet and vulnerable at his table, absorbing every accusation and praise as they flowed around him. Finally, Ethan's moment arrived. His attorney encouraged him to articulate his feelings about what transpired, and as he stood before Judge Harrison and addressed the court, something shifted in the room. There was a mixture of anxiety and determination on his young face as he explained how important it was for him to protect his friend from unjust treatment. With unexpected eloquence and clarity, he navigated through legal concepts, shedding light on his understanding of rights while illuminating his distress about being labeled incorrectly. The room grew still. Even those skeptical about his motives began to listen intently. As both sides concluded their arguments, and Ethan shared his story, it became obvious that beneath all legal jargon and assumptions lay an intricate web of childhood innocence intertwined with the complexities of justice. A revelation lingering palpably in the air as Judge Harrison pondered how best to proceed with this unusual case. As the proceedings continued, the atmosphere in the courtroom thickened with anticipation. Ethan had listened to the arguments presented by both sides and felt a wave of determination surge within him. This was his moment to speak up, not just to defend himself but to illuminate the truth behind his actions and misconceptions about him. When called to the stand, Ethan stood up, his heart pounding yet resolute. He approached the witness box with a mixture of anxiety and purpose, trying to steady his breath as he faced Judge Harrison and the room full of expectant eyes. The judge nodded for him to begin, and without hesitating, Ethan took a deep breath and started to articulate his thoughts with surprising clarity. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steadying as he spoke, "I understand that my actions that day may have seemed inappropriate or even reckless. But I want to clarify what was really happening." Ethan paused and scanned the courtroom, eager to make himself understood. "I wasn't just reacting on impulse. I was recalling our school's policy on bullying that states every student has the right to feel safe and protected while at school." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. They hadn't anticipated such an articulate defense from someone so young. Judge Harrison leaned forward slightly intrigued. Ethan continued, "When I saw Sarah being picked on, I thought it was my responsibility to intervene. I didn't fully think through how my actions might be seen at the time because I believed standing up for her was more important than following a particular protocol." His eyes flickered with resolve as he elaborated on his understanding of self-advocacy and what it meant to defend someone who was vulnerable. Then came a pivotal moment that truly showcased his intelligence. Ethan reached into his pocket and produced a printed copy of the school's anti-bullying policy, a document that had already been discussed during testimonies but took on new significance in his hands as he presented it directly to Judge Harrison. He cited specific articles verbatim, addressing terms like harassment and safety, explaining how these definitions applied to the situation in question. "The rules are here for a reason," Ethan said passionately, holding the document up for all to see. "It's not just words, it's about protecting each other. I may have misjudged how far I could go in advocating for Sarah, but I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I was trying to enforce our shared values." Gasps echoed among the spectators as they realized they were witnessing not just a boy defending himself but also an intelligent young mind navigating complex legal concepts with profound conviction. Judge Harrison's brow furrowed in thought. This new perspective reshaped his understanding of the boy before him. Ethan's testimony shifted the air in the room. What was once an accusation against him evolved into a deeper conversation about values, justice, accountability, and compassion. The sincerity laced in Ethan's words resonated with many present. In articulating his thoughts so eloquently and logically, he challenged not only the perceptions held about him but also prompted those listening, especially adults, to reconsider their views on youth agency and moral responsibility. As Ethan concluded with a hopeful plea for understanding and compassion, something profound hung in the air, an urgent call for empathy in both judgment and decision-making that transcended age boundaries. This unexpected display of intelligence had left a lasting impact on all present as they began re-evaluating the path forward for Ethan Liu beyond this day in court. As the courtroom settled into a momentary silence after Ethan's powerful testimony, Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair, contemplating the boy's words and the implications they held. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a straightforward case of misbehavior now felt like an intricate tapestry of moral complexity woven through with threads of youth, courage, and intellect. The judge's initial impressions of Ethan, shaped by the boy's timid demeanor and societal stereotypes, began to unravel. The articulate manner in which Ethan had presented his defense was not merely the product of a bright student. It was the reflection of a young mind that understood legal principles deeply, perhaps even more so than many adults in the room. Judge Harrison found himself grappling with an internal conflict as he recalled his earlier assumptions. Had he underestimated this boy solely based on his age and appearance? Ethan's ability to navigate complex concepts, to reference specific articles from the school's anti-bullying policy with confidence, and to express his genuine concern for a friend struck a chord within the judge. This was not just a child reacting out of emotion. This was an intelligent individual who had weighed his actions against ethical standards and school guidelines. The realization dawned on Judge Harrison that Ethan was not merely defending himself. He was advocating for a principle that transcended his personal situation. As the proceedings continued, Judge Harrison felt a weight settling on his shoulders, the weight of responsibility to ensure that justice was served fairly and without bias. He pondered how many times he had seen young people before him, labeled and judged without consideration of their unique circumstances or capabilities. Was he prepared to perpetuate a system that could so easily overlook the potential of a child who dared to stand up for what he believed in? The more he listened, the more he recognized that Ethan's case was about more than just an isolated incident at school. It spoke to larger themes of societal expectations, fairness, and the often harsh realities faced by young individuals who dared to challenge norms. Judge Harrison felt a flicker of admiration for Ethan's courage, a quality that was rare and precious at any age. With each passing moment, the judge's understanding deepened. He saw clearly now how easily perceptions could cloud judgment, leading to consequences that might unfairly penalize someone who acted out of genuine concern rather than malice. The dichotomy between Ethan's high intellect and his youth highlighted the need for a nuanced approach to justice, one that took into account not just the actions but also the intentions behind them. As the hearing progressed and the final arguments loomed, Judge Harrison resolved to approach his ruling with an open heart and mind. He would strive to balance accountability with compassion, recognizing Ethan not only as a boy caught in a complicated situation but as a remarkable individual capable of profound insights. This pivotal realization marked a turning point, not just in Ethan's case but in how Judge Harrison would forever view the intersection of youth and justice, ensuring that he would carry this lesson into future decisions. As Ethan concluded his testimony, a stirring wave of reactions rippled through the courtroom. The audience, initially filled with skepticism and judgment, now found themselves grappling with a haunting admiration for the young boy who had eloquently defended not only his actions but also the principle of standing up against bullying. Whispers spread like wildfire among the attendees, capturing their disbelief and evolving opinions. In one corner sat a group of parents who had originally come prepared to see Ethan reprimanded for what they perceived as reckless behavior. As Ethan spoke, they exchanged glances of surprise, gradually leaning forward, captivated by his confident articulation of rights and responsibilities. Several members murmured expressions of awe. "He's just a child," and "Can you believe how well he explained that?" Their initial doubts began to fade away, replaced by an understanding that this boy was not merely a victim of circumstance but a young advocate with considerable insights into justice. Nearby, Sarah's parents watched from the back rows, tears welling in their eyes as they listened to their daughter's friend defend her so passionately. They had known Ethan as quiet and reserved but never comprehended the depth of his intelligence or moral conviction until that moment. Pangs of regret coursed through them. Had their initial judgments clouded their understanding of who he truly was? This revelation struck deep chords within them about the nature of childhood challenges and growth. A few rows ahead sat teachers from Ethan's school, some skeptical and others intrigued, whose perceptions transformed as they absorbed every nuance of his argument. One teacher, Mr. Thompson, shifted uncomfortably in his seat as he remembered chastising Ethan before for being overly serious in class discussions. He now felt a mixture of respect and embarrassment at having misunderstood the extraordinary potential lying beneath the boy's shy exterior. Even some students' pilfering glances at one another shifted from casual indifference to thoughtful contemplation. Those who once teased Ethan for being too smart began to recognize the courage it took to express such convictions publicly. They witnessed firsthand that intelligence wasn't simply defined by grades. True wisdom came from understanding one's moral compass and standing firmly behind it. As Judge Harrison listened attentively to the reactions swirling around him, he too felt an emotional connection building within the courtroom walls. A shared realization that transcended age or background. People were questioning their preconceived notions about youth, about what it meant to be brave, compassionate, and informed in an environment where speaking out could lead to scrutiny instead of support. Ultimately, this moment sparked not just individual reflections among those present but collective growth in understanding sentiment towards young people taking stands on important issues. It became clear that every voice mattered, regardless of age or circumstance. The atmosphere evolved from one marked by tension and uncertainty into something hopeful, a recognition that empathy could serve as a powerful tool for learning and change. As Judge Harrison prepared to make his ruling that would impact how they viewed not just Ethan but all youth caught between innocence and accountability, he pondered how those ripple effects might extend beyond this room into broader societal discussions about justice and mentorship within communities moving forward. As the courtroom buzzed with tension and anticipation, Judge Harrison prepared to announce his ruling regarding Ethan Liu's case. Initially, he had contemplated imposing a fine, reflecting what he considered standard disciplinary measures for a minor infraction, perhaps a nominal fee accompanied by community service hours. In his mind, it was crucial to send a message about accountability, especially given the chaos that had unfolded at school. However, as Ethan's testimony lingered in the air, Judge Harrison found himself at a crossroads. The boy's articulate defense, underscored by an impressive grasp of legal principles and moral responsibility, had stirred something deep within the judge. It became increasingly clear that imposing traditional punitive measures would overlook the extraordinary character and potential of this young individual who had demonstrated profound insight and courage in standing up for a friend. With each moment that passed, Judge Harrison reflected on Ethan's situation and the broader implications of his judgment. He realized that to impose a fine would not only diminish Ethan's remarkable display of intelligence but also undermine the very values that needed to be encouraged in youths: empathy, advocacy, and standing against injustice. This was more than just a case about a school incident. It was a litmus test for how society valued young voices in difficult situations. After consulting briefly with court officials through a quiet exchange of glances, Judge Harrison made his decision. "In light of the new evidence presented today," he began, letting the gravity of his words settle among those present, "I believe it is essential to recognize the intent behind Ethan's actions rather than penalize him for the outcome." The room fell silent as Judge Harrison continued. "Therefore, I will not impose any monetary fines or punitive measures. Instead, I will encourage Ethan to partake in mentorship programs that allow him to share his experiences with peers facing similar challenges. This will not only foster his growth but also help others understand the importance of standing up for what is right." A wave of relief washed over Ethan as he realized the judge's ruling was not a verdict against him but rather an acknowledgement of his strength and moral conviction. The responses from those in attendance reflected this sentiment. Gasps morphed into murmurs of approval as parents and spectators recognized the significance of valuing understanding over punishment. In this moment, Judge Harrison saw more than just a young boy. He saw potential for positive impact on his community and beyond. He recognized that Ethan could serve as an example for others facing bullying or social injustice, illuminating how one voice could inspire change. With this ruling, Judge Harrison shifted the focus away from punishment towards encouragement and growth, reinforcing his belief in nurturing young minds capable of profound insights. The courtroom atmosphere transformed into something hopeful, a collective realization that this case could have lasting implications not just for Ethan but for future generations grappling with their own moral dilemmas. As the proceedings drew to a close, it was clear that this decision marked a pivotal moment not only in Ethan's life but also in how justice was framed in contexts involving youth, setting a precedent for compassion while fostering understanding within society at large. The case of Ethan Liu unfolded as a poignant exploration of themes surrounding prejudice and perception, revealing how deeply ingrained stereotypes can lead to significant misjudgments in critical situations. At the heart of this courtroom drama was the existing societal narrative that often pigeonholes young people based on their appearance or background, particularly those from immigrant families. In Ethan's situation, Judge Harrison initially approached the case with a clouded lens shaped by preconceived notions about the boy's ethnicity and demeanor. Judge Harrison's initial assumptions about Ethan, viewing him as timid or solely a troublemaker, exemplified how biases could distort judgment. The judge's skepticism mirrored a broader societal trend where individuals, especially young people, are often judged hastily based on superficial traits rather than assessed on their merits or intentions. This inclination to categorize others based on stereotypes created an environment ripe for misunderstanding, compelling the audience to confront their own biases as Ethan's story unraveled. Ethan's testimony served as a powerful counter-narrative, challenging these perceptions head-on. As he articulated his defense, it became clear that he was not merely a quiet child but rather a young legal prodigy capable of promoting awareness about social justice issues. His ability to navigate complex legal language and principles showcased the danger of pigeonholing individuals based on stereotypes. Judging him solely on his reserved personality could have led to overlooking his immense potential and insightful perspectives. The collective realization among attendees that they had misjudged Ethan sparked critical introspection regarding their preconceived beliefs. Parents in the courtroom began to reflect on how their initial reactions were steeped in societal norms that often undervalue youth agency. Teachers who once thought of Ethan as merely an academically inclined student started recognizing the vitality of emotional intelligence and moral courage present in young people, qualities that are sometimes overshadowed by traditional measures of success. Moreover, the incident illuminated how prejudice can inadvertently marginalize individuals who seek to act with integrity in challenging situations. In this case, Ethan's attempt to protect his friend exemplified a noble pursuit for justice that was misinterpreted through a narrow lens. This misjudgment not only put him at risk legally but also painted a narrative around him that conflicted with the values of empathy and advocacy that many were now beginning to appreciate. As Judge Harrison shifted away from punitive measures toward nurturing Ethan's potential, it laid bare the necessity for systemic change in how society views minority youth. The decision to redirect Ethan into mentorship reflected an understanding that true justice encompasses compassion and support rather than blind adherence to rules. Ultimately, what transpired in that courtroom transcended Ethan's individual case. It became a catalyst for dialogue about stereotypes, youth empowerment, and the urgent need for compassionate justice that listens to young voices. The court transformed into a microcosm of broader societal reflections, encouraging attendees to reassess their views and recognize the multifaceted aspects inherent within every individual story they encounter, a lesson extending far beyond this singular event and into their everyday lives. The resolution of Ethan Liu's case marked a significant turning point, not only in Ethan's life but also in the broader societal landscape concerning how young individuals are perceived and supported. Judge Harrison's ruling to forego punitive measures in favor of mentorship programs reflected a shift towards nurturing youth rather than merely disciplining them for mistakes made in the context of moral complexity. This decision sent ripples through the community, prompting discussions about the importance of understanding intent and character in evaluating the actions of children and adolescents. In the aftermath of the trial, Ethan became an unexpected symbol of youth advocacy. His experience sparked conversations within educational institutions and local organizations about revising policies related to bullying and how schools handled disciplinary actions involving students. Parents began advocating for training programs that would equip teachers and staff with tools to recognize and support young advocates like Ethan, emphasizing that their roles should include fostering resilience, emotional intelligence, and ethical reasoning. Schools started to reassess their anti-bullying policies as well, recognizing the need for frameworks that not only penalized aggressors but also provided comprehensive support for victims and allies. Community forums were held where parents, educators, and students gathered to share experiences and ideas on creating safe spaces for open dialogue about bullying, empathy, and justice. This collaboration birthed initiatives aimed at developing student leadership programs that encourage young people to engage positively with peers facing similar challenges. Moreover, Ethan's story resonated beyond his immediate community, gaining traction on social media platforms where discussions around youth empowerment flourished. Activists and advocates from various backgrounds reached out to him, inviting him to speak at events focused on justice reform and youth engagement. In sharing his narrative, Ethan not only inspired others but also reinforced the powerful message that standing up for one another can lead to meaningful change. Judge Harrison's perspective transformed as well. He committed to integrating lessons learned from this case into future rulings. He became a vocal advocate for considering the unique circumstances surrounding each case involving minors, ensuring that his courtroom would reflect a more compassionate approach toward justice. He began collaborating with local organizations focused on youth development, promoting workshops for judges and legal professionals aimed at recognizing biases in their assessments of young individuals. As Ethan continued his mentorship work within schools, he found himself thriving in an environment where he could share insights from his own experience while connecting with peers facing similar struggles. This journey not only helped him grow personally but allowed him to contribute actively to reshaping narratives around young people advocating against injustices they witness. Ultimately, the resolution of Ethan's case acted as a catalyst for broader societal change, a reminder of the enduring impact one voice can have when empowered by understanding and compassion. The evolution of attitudes towards youth engagement established a foundation upon which future generations could build, fostering environments where young voices are celebrated rather than silenced. The courtroom that once echoed with skepticism had transformed into a platform for growth, understanding, and hope, an outcome that exceeded anyone's expectations at the onset of this unusual legal saga. The events surrounding Ethan Liu's case serve as a poignant reminder of the importance of recognizing intelligence, talent, and potential beyond superficial attributes such as age or appearance. In a society that often defaults to preconceived notions based on stereotypes, Ethan's experience highlights the critical need for a paradigm shift in how we view young individuals, particularly those from diverse backgrounds. Throughout the courtroom proceedings, many attendees came face to face with their biases, ultimately discovering that true potential exists in unexpected forms. Ethan's poised defense and articulate understanding of complex legal principles shattered the limitations imposed by his timid demeanor. This transformation not only changed how Judge Harrison viewed Ethan but also encouraged spectators to reevaluate their assumptions about youth and their capabilities. Ethan's journey illustrates that intelligence is not solely a product of formal education or outward confidence. It can manifest in quiet resilience and profound ethical understanding. As he stood before the court, navigating intricate legal concepts while advocating for his friend, he embodied a maturity and wisdom that transcended his years. His actions prompted adults in the room, including educators and parents, to recognize that nurturing such qualities is essential to fostering a supportive environment for all children. Moreover, this case underscores the significance of mentorship and guidance in shaping young minds. By redirecting Ethan towards mentorship opportunities rather than punitive measures, Judge Harrison illuminated the path forward, not just for Ethan but for countless other youths who may feel marginalized or misunderstood. It became clear that when young individuals are empowered to share their experiences and insights, they enrich their communities profoundly. The broader implications of this incident extend beyond the courtroom into societal attitudes toward youth engagement. The dialogue sparked by Ethan's situation has prompted discussions around the need for educational institutions to implement training programs aimed at developing emotional intelligence and ethical reasoning among students. Schools are beginning to recognize the value of creating environments where young voices are heard, validated, and celebrated rather than stifled by traditional expectations. As communities reflect on Ethan's story, there emerges a collective realization: every child carries within them unique strengths that deserve recognition and encouragement. The notion that intelligence and potential can be hidden beneath layers of expectations or stereotypes reinforces the necessity for compassionate approaches in education and justice alike. Ultimately, this incident teaches us that we must look beyond surface appearances to understand the complexity of each individual's story. By fostering an inclusive mindset that prioritizes empathy and understanding over judgment based on preconceived notions, society can cultivate spaces where all children, regardless of their backgrounds, can thrive and contribute meaningfully. Ethan Liu's case serves as both a challenge and an inspiration. It calls upon everyone to embrace diversity in thought and experience while advocating for systems that uplift rather than marginalize young voices. This commitment ultimately shapes a more informed generation capable of tackling tomorrow's challenges with insight and compassion, a legacy worth nurturing for future generations.